Thank you all for coming. The afternoon session is about to start. Obviously, the tricky part of the start of the session is to find your country. So if you have any trouble finding your country, please come up to the front and we'll try and help you out. Yeah, so if you can't see your country name on the table, just come over to one of our facilitators here and we'll help you out. All right, if there are too many people at your table, it's probably wise to split up and find another table very close by. So if you have a very large delegation, you need 2 tables. Try and sit as close to each other as you can and find probably the next door table that's available. So please do that.
Thank you.
Misschien moet je... looking good, man.
You come. So you are at the center. It's coming.
He's coming, wait. Oh. No.
Good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, we're about to start now, and I appreciate, obviously, it's been a bit of a logistic challenge to get everyone at the right table, but I hope you're there. And if you have any trouble still, or you're coming in late, please try and find one of the facilitators here so they can help you out, find your table as well.
Klein. We made 3 tables so again, huh?
Yeah. All right. So, welcome everyone.
What's that?
Thank you for attending this session. This morning, obviously, you've had the opportunity to talk about the global ecosystem, but this afternoon we'll focus more on your own country ecosystem. So rather than looking broad, you're actually going to dig in a little bit to your own country. So there's 3 people here that will facilitate that. There's myself. My name is Arjan Goudsblom. I'm from the Netherlands. I'll tell a little bit more about that. And I'll be on stage co-facilitated with Mohamed Al-Dawash from Bahrain and Bart Sutorius, a colleague of mine in Amsterdam as well. So we'll cover quite a few things today. We have about 30 minutes of us talking. But then the rest of the afternoon is really about you guys doing a little bit of work on a canvas that we'll introduce to you later. What it will do is that it will determine the boundaries of your ecosystem. It talks about what makes it unique. It talks about why actually developing your ecosystem and the sense of urgency around that. You'll take stock and celebrate all the achievements that you've had so far. It's a very important point. You visualize the relative strengths. We'll use some color coding on the canvas. And finally, we're going to look forward a little bit as well. So who will lead and take ownership of developments in your ecosystem? Most importantly as well, the reason why we sit together at tables, and you might be with someone that you're not familiar with, it's very important for us and for you guys to share your stories about developments in your ecosystem so you can learn from that as well. So 3 things we want you to take away from today, hopefully. That is to be clearer on your ecosystem and the boundaries and where to focus. Particularly to be excited about the next phase of development. And also be inspired by your fellow ecosystem participants as well. So now I'll invite on stage Mohamed Al-Dawash from Bahrain, from the incubator, our partner incubator in Bahrain, CH9.
Make one. Yeah, please.
Allah. In Bahrain, we're conducting the GEC for the first time in the Middle East, and this is a thrill itself in its own. We'll do this so much informal. You really don't want me to do a speech. That's the last thing I think. I see the eyes popping up. And I'll go through a few slides, and from those few slides, Bart will probably carry on, and then we'll go into the canvases. So what you see in the screen is simply, this is how we started. This is how we started here in Bahrain on each and every ecosystem. It's a shark. It's a shark in there who start as small, as tiny as it is, and then the shark becomes the one you know. But not all the sharks becomes the one you know. Some of them, they just stop in there. Some of them, they just stop in the size of my hand, right? But as an ecosystem, as in Bahrain, that we has just got really out of our hibernating. We were sleeping for so many years in 2017, and we came up with the concept, along with corporate government and many others partners, with what we call today Startup Bahrain. This is how we connect. This is the 3 slides, I think, that we have started putting up the what we need to start with as an entrepreneurs, as a startup. And I don't do a Chinese wall between entrepreneurs and startups, because to me, entrepreneurs means startups as much as these startups means entrepreneurs and innovation and creativity. So these 3 comes all together. Now, if you look at the tomorrow, what we've been doing over the years in our own accelerator, humbly small, we're growing up humbly with a very little margin of growth, but with lots of mentoring. And this is what we're trying to add into here. And tomorrow, what's tomorrow? Tomorrow leaders are entrepreneurs. And if I, 20 years ago, been giving the tools that is given to each and every entrepreneurs, Mariam is laughing, I'll be probably the great Macedonian, the great, that I'll be conquering the world probably, right? But the idea behind it is there are so many tools in the world and in the Gulf has started right now for tomorrow leaders. Whether those leaders will be entrepreneurs and all of startups, or they will be a leaders in their own with an entrepreneur's spirits. This is how we started. This is how we started, and there are godfathers behind this, honestly. And there are 6 pillars. And those 6 pillars, it goes into, to start with, how could we gather a community? And whether we start with a community and then we start with education and there are probably cooperates, that's just probably a ranking. That's what we need to detail today with, I guess, 70 countries. And then it goes to the accelerators. So we've been doing lots of work in those accelerators. Those accelerators, it was unknown to us. It wasn't exist a few years back in the Gulf. So we started putting up accelerators and incubators in the Gulf. And then education, of course. We lack way behind other nations when it comes specifically in the Gulf with education, and education that we're not going to be teaching you entrepreneurship in a classroom. No, education means that you will be an entrepreneur out of from your DNA as a creator and innovators. And then, here we go. It goes with who's the corporate partners. An ecosystem without a corporate partners means nothing. So the corporate partner, and then the ranking start. Probably we started with the corporate partners at the end, but others, a very reputable ecosystem, like in Amsterdam, they started first with the corporate partners, and then they carried on with the government. And then the funding. How could we do the funding for startups and VCs, which is something, again, neither accelerator or a VC fund were known in the region or in the Gulf, and then government, of course. Now, why did I come to the end as the government? Because to us here in the Gulf, we started with the government, and now we're working with the university. It should be the other way around, by the way. We should start with the university, we go with the cooperates, and we go with the ecosystem, and then we bring in the government for rules, regulation, as much as what you see today. Today, that was a thrill to me last year, when Bahrain has been put in the genome as the only recognizable ecosystem in the Middle East. And that was just 2 years, by the way. This is 2018. We just started 2017. And to be in that list in the ecosystem as recognizable ecosystem, that was a thrill to us in Bahrain, the smallest, the tiniest country in the entire MENA region. This is how you see the mapping today. Whether this map, many of you will be agree to it or not, but this is the Arab world. The Arab world has come up with so much startups, many of them, by the way, unknown. That's why, do not really look at those circles. The UAE, they are, because very transparent, UAE, they are very driven by media and driven by information and data. That's why you see most of the startup comes out of them. But there are hundreds comes out from Saudi, Kuwait, Egypt, Lebanon, each and every day. So this came last week, by the way, in the economic forum in the Dead Sea. But if you look at this, it is not the reality what's in the stand, what is stand today in the region. This is how we started. We started beginning of this year with ACE Accelerator, mapping the ecosystem. Mapping the ecosystem with those stakeholders. So we put them in a room for 3 days, and we asked them to do the map your local ecosystem. Happily, that we had one from Kuwait, one from Saudi, so we started mapping the Gulf ecosystem. And this is what we're doing today. Your participation will be coming into with those along. But we're not doing today the Bahrain. We're not doing today the Gulf along with Jinn. We're doing the entire world. We're doing the global mapping of ecosystem. What I'm missing, what I need that others could provide me with, and versa via. Thank you very much. I'll hand it to Maria.
Thank you. Thank you. So just for inspiration, I thought I'll do a little example from my home country, the Netherlands. I also have an example from my other home country, which is Australia, where I've lived for about 15 years, hence my weird accent combination. The Netherlands, obviously, tiny population, and comparable to New York City. And there's a lot happening. So it's tiny, but it's still the #2 country in terms of innovation. So this is the index for dynamic entrepreneurship, just brought out, and you've seen it probably on your canvas as well. So how can a tiny country like the Netherlands be such an innovative place? Well, the most important thing, and I want you to think about it for your own country as well, is your roots. Like, what is it in your roots, in your own history, that makes it fertile for an entrepreneurship ecosystem? So those are the questions we're going to work with today. In terms of Holland, we obviously have quite a rich, as you might know, colonial past. So we've always traveled and traded. The spice trade in the early 17th century was a means, really, to take the Netherlands all over the world by ship and brought back all sorts of goods. So trading is very important for Holland. And you see it reflected in the ecosystem as well. Another element in the Netherlands is 1/3 of it is below the sea level. So we have to always fight water and water coming in. So this is the Delta Works in the south of Holland, where we had a big flood in 1953. And on the back of that, we developed this kind of brilliant way of engineering how to keep water out, but also let it stream in when it's allowed to do so. So again, history determines how you innovate to a certain extent. Another way, very small, we're very connected, so we have big data centers. So the Netherlands is one of the biggest hubs in Europe for data centers. So a lot of the big companies come there, store their data. So connectivity is very important in the Netherlands as well. Same with flights, harbors. It's really a connective hub for Europe. So there's a lot of similarities with Bahrain. Small nation, always traders, always companies or societies coming through and dealing with them. So we develop entrepreneurs. This is our startup village in Amsterdam, Science Park. And we're really trying to build the next generation of entrepreneurs there. And importantly, the next level of jobs as well. So we create new jobs. Startups are the city's top job generator, the growth engine really for future growth, which is very important. So far the Netherlands. Now let's take you back a little bit further down to Australia, where I've lived for a long time. And this goes into the why, like why is there an urgency to develop startup ecosystems? And Australia in particular, they hold the world record for uninterrupted economic growth. They're very wealthy, 27 years of uninterrupted growth. So no problem really, mining was always fueling that economy. So they love to relax in Australia, so why not do that? Why not just fire up the Barbie and throw a few strings on there and just keep relaxing, right? Well, the economics for conventional mining technologies, it doesn't stack up anymore. Renewable energy sources are often cheaper than the traditional mining resources, for example. But there are other things as well. There's droughts that hurt farmlands. Tourism is being hit because of the Great Barrier Reef disappearing, for example. Property is under threat because of rising sea levels. Housing booms are leveling out. So there's a lot of issues. Car manufacturing disappearing. There's a lot of issues in the society that really urges them to kind of change and create jobs for the future, to create the wealth from the future as well. So the way they've done that is to have a regional focus. There's a lot of universities, top-class universities in Melbourne and Sydney. So a lot of the VinTech, but also the MedTech are concentrated hubs of innovation in those city centers. But there's other parts of Australia, it's quite a wide country, that look at advanced manufacturing. Adelaide, for example, used to be a car manufacturing hub. It now looks at advanced manufacturing. So you see a logical transition from the old world into the new world. Defense and cybersecurity, obviously a very government-ruled area, is being done in Canberra, the capital of Australia. And agriculture, obviously regional Australia. So you see all these regional hubs existing where there is a focus on certain parts of innovation that kind of relates back to what's done before. So again, keep that in mind when you develop your own canvas. What is so typical about your ecosystem? Where do you want to focus on? So that will be a very important message. Well, this is the most important message, and that is be your own hero. So create your own ecosystem with your own development and your own goals, rooted in the history and the culture of your own nation. That's my main message here. So now I'll hand over to Bart, who will tell you a bit more about the ecosystem canvas.
Thank you, Arjen. Hello, ecosystem builders. We would like you to work this afternoon with a canvas that really structures the thinking about ecosystems. And first of all, you will have a geographical focus, of course. That will be today your country. Within countries, you often see a lot of ecosystems, especially when entrepreneurship is developed, but also when it's in a low development level, say. So the region, the definition of the region is pretty important. Okay, today it's the country that you're gonna have as a focus area, but in a later stage, you might look at certain areas in your country, depending on the country, depending how big it is, depending on the themes. And also you can look at a regional and a worldwide ecosystem. So there are two scopes, the geographical focus and the thematical scope. Are you in mining, like Australia used to be? Are you in agriculture? Are you in both? Are you in energy? Are you in tech? Or are you maybe in palm oil, the biggest in the world? So you need a scope, and it really helps if you have that scope from the theme and the geography to use the canvas. Well, this is the canvas, and I will shortly explain to you how it will work, and you will work interactively with the focus of your country with this canvas during this afternoon for about, let's say, 1.5 to 2 hours. First of all, we have 4 stages of a company. It's no rocket science, it just helps you thinking, you know. So you have this concept stage. Hey, I have an idea, or I have an invention, or I have a certain innovation direction. Then I really start this company, and I would like to make turnover. I don't have to make a profit there, but the startup will make turnover. Then you get in the growth stage, and at that moment, you will have a certain market coverage. And you can discuss what the borders between these stages are, of course, but in general, you have a concept, a start, a growth, and a maturity stage. In the maturity stage, you have a portfolio of products or services, or either maybe more regions or more countries. Maybe you are worldwide. But also you have startups that start worldwide, of course, if you start in tech. So it's no rocket science to fill this in, it just helps you thinking. The first row is the entrepreneurs. In general, when you look at innovation, the entrepreneurs don't have really a role there if you look at innovation development. But the entrepreneurs are actually very, very important to build an ecosystem. If you don't have entrepreneurs in your region, it's difficult to build, it's difficult to have examples. Of course, you have a government that can do a lot or that can do a little. They can do funding, they can do subsidies, all that. You're familiar with that. You have knowledge institutes in general. You have the universities. You have the universities of applied sciences. You have private training consultancy offers that help you to gain knowledge. Then you have established companies that often work with entrepreneurs, either as launching customers, or maybe they give trainings, or maybe they organize networks. Then you would have the service providers like banks, consultants, lawyers, all that, and they offer often special, same thing, networking, training, advice, whatever, for starting companies or growing companies. It's not only about starting, it's also about growing and scaling and focusing and becoming mature. Then, of course, you have the incubators. Not all countries have incubators, but everybody knows what it is. And some start to develop incubators, others already have a few in certain regions, maybe not in other regions. You have the incubators and the accelerators. The incubators are more in the start, going to the growth. The accelerators, usually there is a genuine, serious startup accelerating towards growth and maturity. And of course, the investors. And you can discuss whether the bank is a service provider or an investor. I would say it's a service provider because it's pretty hard what you do there. They don't invest, they don't take a risk. An investor takes a risk. And then finally, you might have other stakeholders that don't really fit in this stakeholders column. So you have like, on the left side, you have the rows of the stakeholders, obvious, and above, on top, you have the 4 stages. Let's go through this canvas to get a bit of a feel. This guy is very famous in Holland. He started off as a very small shark. He flew to New York, bought sneakers, and came back with a suitcase of sneakers and made quite some money. And then he started flying with more suitcases, and then he got it shipped. And then he thought, I can design my own sneakers. Why not? So he made his own brand, Pata, which is called shoe in like street language. The shark, the little shark, was growing, and he ended up partnering with Nike, not only one time, but he made a lot of shoes together. They made shoes together, they made shirts together, all kinds of stuff. So he's an example of an entrepreneur that grew from a small shark, and he's now swimming with the big fishes. And if you put him in the canvas, he would be there, because he is helping people think about opportunities, and he also is helping startups. And actually, I have the honor to work with him pretty often with students. He is even mentoring students on entrepreneurship, like 4 hours a week, and he loves to do that. But he also is an example for other entrepreneurs and people with ideas. So he would be there on the canvas. Another example, we have Hackers and Founders in Amsterdam. It's a cafe, it's a network for tech companies. Every week, no, every month they will be together. They also be there on the campus, but a little bit further to the right, because they're already starting. Of course, they are inspiring, but usually they especially have a big value for the starters. Startup in residence. It says incubator. Incubator in this case is not an independent incubator, but it's the government of Amsterdam helping certain types of entrepreneurs, as you can see, mobility, healthy city, circular economy, they're helping them. How? To realize a market. They say, okay, we are your launching customer, why not? So all these companies, they work with the government doesn't pay subsidy, no, they buy their services or their products. So the government would be there in starting and growing, because that's what they're aiming at Startup in Residence. The minor entrepreneurship. There's a lot going on in Amsterdam and Holland on education about entrepreneurship. This is just an example. The minor of entrepreneurship, there are quite a few minors in the Amsterdam region. There are all levels of education there. So in general, you see there, concept and start. So it's also starting. It's a new way of education where people actually start a business within the minor. Very special, usually you learn about business plans and all that. No business plan, learning by doing. So it's both inspiring, learning, and really become a startup. Then we have Accenture, which is a consultancy firm on management, on organization and all that, and they stimulate entrepreneurship with innovation awards every year. It's a big thing going on. They would be there. So it's kind of an established company, and it's big, and it's a service provider. And I put it on the edge of it, but so on the border of the two blocks. Then we have ACE, that's where we're from, Ian and me, and it's an incubator. So ACE is there, and you see it's pretty much to the right because it also really helps scaling. If it was a proper incubator only helping the startups, it would be a little bit to the left. Angel Island is a special happening. Investors from the region usually or from the country are invited to go on a ship to this small island, and they stay there for a day. They cannot go off, and they go together with entrepreneurs and with startups, and then they are stuck on this very small island. You can see how small it is. I mean, it's maybe, I don't know, 200 meters long or a bit more. So these would be there because in general, it's both startups and growing. We have a capital fund run by students. First in the EU, would be there because venture capitalists step in later when a company is really growing. They don't step in the beginning. It's more the angel investors there. And now you have other stakeholders. Maybe Jen would be there. And in Amsterdam, we have the Amsterdam Economic Board, which sounds as a very governmental organization, but actually is a triple helix, meaning that universities, companies, and government work together, and on a very serious level, say, but also on a very focused level. And this really is needed as much as the little shark that got big that you saw in the beginning. So this helps you to map out your ecosystem. If you put all your activities and organizations in there, you will see, oh, we are strong in this block. We have a blind spot maybe in that block. We should develop this. And you can communicate easier also with the people in the region or with other regions. I will get into the first assignment for you.
All right, there's a lot of information. A lot of information here. So that was it, you know. So now we gotta turn it back to you guys, and it's a bit of work to be done. This is a workshop we usually conduct over 2 days, so this will be a very short version. And we're just gonna let you play a little bit with the canvas. So we're gonna do a few things. In front of you, you'll see A3 papers, and with some markers as well. And the first thing that we want to do, so we quickly take you through the process of the canvas, and it starts with determining the boundaries of your ecosystem, so both geographically and by themes. So the first thing I want you to do is write the name of your country on the A3. So if you're on a table with, by yourself or with multiple people, you need one A3 for every country. If it's a very big delegation, you can potentially split it and create 2 canvases. So I'd like you to take a bit of time to write down your country name. And also, on the same A3, I want you to look at what I spoke about, the roots of your ecosystem. So what are the important industries in your country? What is unique about it? And looking to the future, I guess, what do you want to be known for? So what do you want to be famous for in the world as a country? So have a think and talk to your fellow participants as well about what it is that makes your ecosystem unique. And we'll have, how many minutes do we have for this part? We have about 10 minutes to work on this particular exercise. So be walking around, and if you have any questions, just let us know. So, sorry, obviously USP, which is a term that we use quite often, and not everyone is familiar with that, but it means unique selling point. So USP means unique selling point. So think about the things about your ecosystems that are unique to your country. sense, I guess, from, oops, am I on? Maybe. Hello? Okay, thank you. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a discussion, I'm sure, around the tables, around the, the scope of the ecosystem and the strength and the, I guess the core and the roots of this ecosystem as well. So you have some uniqueness of where you can kind of build your ecosystem on, right? So the next phase, question before we actually get out the canvases, which will be the exciting part, what are the success metrics of your ecosystem? So now you've defined the uniqueness of it. What do you want to achieve with the startup ecosystem? For example, you saw in Australia, it's very much about jobs, so creating jobs, but also to fight some challenges, some climate change challenges or natural disasters. But there will be many more reasons why you would start an ecosystem. So think about, as a next question, what are the success metrics of your ecosystem? So how you want to measure success of your entrepreneurial ecosystems? What are the metrics that you will use? So we have about 10 minutes to 12 minutes to talk about that as well. If there's any questions, just come over or raise your hand and we'll just come over to your table, yeah? Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Sorry to interrupt your discussions. As Arjen already explained, it's like a short introduction to the Canvas. Of course, you need more time to answer pretty big questions like this. So keep the questions in mind, take them home, and then we go and work with the Canvas right now. So the success metrics for men. So fill in your own Canvas. You will get the Canvas right now. They are spread as we speak. The bigger groups on bigger tables will use an A1, the smaller groups an A2, but you use per country, you use one Canvas. And try to map out all existing programs, instruments, activities, not the future ones. No, what does it look like now? What's the current state of your ecosystem? Thank you.
So I know some companies will provide a loan, others.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have about, let's say, 21 minutes left, and try to be very specific. Try to put the names there if you have names. What kind of program, what kind of activity, what kind of instrument, what kind of inspiring entrepreneur or other leader in an entrepreneurship ecosystem. So try to be specific if you can. And another thing, try to write small, because you also have to fit in the future later. So leave some space for the future, but now focus on the current ecosystem.
both
Hey,
of them.
okay, excellent.
With the global report.
All right, guys.
It's no pencil, so they have to kind of
Okay.
make it closer.
All right. So hopefully that will take you through the next step, and hopefully you get a better insight now in some of the existing activities in your ecosystem. Now the next thing, we're going to use some colors. So there's some examples now in your canvas that you will have put there. Now the next thing is to determine the relative strengths and weaknesses in your ecosystem. So it's not so much anymore about writing things down. It's about coloring the blocks in your canvas. So there's two colors you got to get. You get a green and a red one. Now you color the green ones for all the blocks that you think are reasonably well developed. So there's enough activities there, activities work, so you're quite happy with the progress in those blocks. It could be that there's a lot of government support, for example, in the idea phase, so you would color that green. Now there might be other areas that are less developed, or that doesn't work very well. So you use the red pencil for that, and you kind of map, you just color it in as a red block. So that's the areas that needs more development, doesn't work really well. So you all get now green and red markers on your table, and the next exercise will take about 8 minutes, where you quickly say, okay, this works really well, this doesn't work very well, so red and green. That it could also be that there's no activities whatsoever in a block, just leave that blank. So some blocks will be blank, some will be green, and some will be red. So if there's any unclarity about that, just let us know, and we'll speak to you in about 8 minutes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, there can be a lot of discussion going on for another half an hour longer about the red and the green, and are these programs good or not? Are these instruments good or not? Do we need to improve them? Does the certain stakeholder needs to improve them? Do we have to talk with them? Do we have to collaborate? You might have some ideas to improve there. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I really would like you to go and think about your future. So you go from the current state that you were in, you go to the future, let's say 2023. So that's only like 3.5 years, but of course you need some dots on the horizon, maybe in 2030, but it really helps if you think in a period of 2, 3, 4 years. So please start thinking about the future. What would you love to have there? So what stakeholders should be involved, or when they are already involved, should they be involved in another way? What new activities, programs, instruments need to be in place or you would like to have in place? Anything goes in this stage, of course, because it's the future. So please. Ladies and gentlemen, something went wrong a little bit because the next slide was already there and some are working on the next slide that we don't show anymore. So the idea is that you now think about the future. What do you want to happen in your ecosystem? And which, of course, it's very difficult to maybe write it all in one canvas. So we'll have more canvases for people that need extra space. And one more important note, please, any future activity or instrument or program, mark it with an F, the F of future, because then you will recognize, the F stands for future. So please mark all the future instruments, programs, etc. with an F. Thank you very much.
Guys, so we're going to do one or two more things, and I guess the first thing that I really want to emphasize is to put your country name on all the documents that you develop. So put your country name on the right top hand side of the canvas, so we actually know and get it back to you as well on Thursday. So maybe on Thursday you're still working with that as well. So make sure your country name is on all the documents that you provide. And then we'll leave them here, we take photos and collect it. And also make sure you make a distinction between the future activities and the past activities. So put an F, for example, next to the future activities. All right, so now the one thing that we'd like you to do, you get a few stickers. And we'd like you to select the 3 areas that are most important to you and to your ecosystem to develop moving forward. So what are the 3 quarters in your canvas that you really think requires attention over the next 2 or 3 years? So that's the last bit you have to do on the canvas. And after that, we'll have a bit of time to share some insights as well.
And you have to stick it in, doesn't matter the colors, which block need attention. So do not use more than 3 stickers. It need to be enhanced. Need more attention to put more efforts in enhancing it, in doing it, or in achieving it. That's too much stickers. So we're approaching, I guess, the end of it. Now, what you see in the screen, we want you to take, let me say, max 3 minutes to decide among you, each and every country, in the top 3 insights regarding your own ecosystem. Not regional, not global, but your own ecosystem. That I'll give you to deliberate with your colleague about 3 minutes. Then I will give the microphone to each and every table, and you need to designate one to talk in your behalf of the 3 insights, as well as you're looking an outlook out from this exercise as it goes on. And then we'll be doing the closing, and we'll tell you exactly what this is going to be generating at and what's going to be resulting at. So 3 minutes between yourself, and decide who will be talking in your behalf, each and every table. Let's just focus and listen to each and every table of their insights and the 3 of them. So who will be talking in your behalf? Here you go. If just the name will be fine.
So my name is Iman, and we're representing the United Arab Emirates. Sure. Yes, absolutely. We're representing the United Arab Emirates, and this, I have to say, was a very interesting exercise for us to do. And we came up with the top 3 insights about the UAE's ecosystem. It's one that's still nascent, but has seen a lot of development over the past couple of years. But what we realized is we do a lot of work in the start and growth phases. However, when it comes to the concept phase and the maturity phase, we do have a couple of gaps, primarily in the concept phase when it comes to education and awareness and knowing where to start. And in the maturity stage, when it comes to follow-on funding, startups often have to reach beyond the region and have to operate in global ecosystems to be able to fundraise. And the third insight that we have is when it comes to the start and growth phase, is that it's still relatively expensive to set up a business, and not all of the policies and the regulations are that friendly yet. And it's not that easy to set up, to start the business.
So I guess it's more like affordability. That's what you are looking for, as well as access to market for growth. يعني ما في إلا اثنينكم.
Could you please
Go ahead. You'll do it. Stand a name. Bahrain.
Okay, for Bahrain, really it was very challenging to see the ecosystem. However, we find certain opportunities in our exercise. So mainly it was in the established companies, the growth phase. So we find that this area is a white spot, so it's not touchable. So this is one area. Second area is about knowledge and institute. Also in the growth phase and startup, I mean it's a requirement. And in for investors, also we have a white spot for growth and startup.
So the emphasis into the investors, I guess, and the funding gap. Keep in mind that Bahrain, we just started. Just 2 years, our ecosystem as a startup Bahrain has just kicked off.
Hello, everybody. Okay, great. We have Team Finland, and we have a representative of Singapore. So Finland and Singapore actually are representing 2 small nations alongside big countries like China, and Finland is with Russia. So I think we have a map on Finland where we basically have been successful in building early stage initiatives from governmental side. We have a strong youth community within Finland where a lot of the startup ecosystem innovations are coming from bottom up. And that's totally different from a lot of the big nations and a lot of the countries that are actually here. So I think you should try to copy some of the ideas that we are doing with empowering and giving an opportunity for young people to experience, to fail fast, to be able to demonstrate that they're capable of doing things which usually are done by big corporations. We have these kind of examples. For example, student-run tech conference called Slush. It's a 20,000 visitor investor startup conference in Helsinki. And we have also other initiatives where we have the youth doing all the empowerment work, and basically cities and municipalities and governmental organizations are basically just supporting these youth organizations. So we are empowering the young people of Finland, and we want other countries to do the similar things. And one thing about these youth organizations, they're happy to share their experience and knowledge. So if you find a Finnish youth initiative, just contact them, and they will actually share all of their experiences and give all of their tool sets that they have been developing so that you can do similar impacts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Finland. And I guess there isn't any harm of copying, right? It works with you in Finland, and we're in here. Try to copy the good one, and we leave the downsized one. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jaren from Singapore. So pretty similar to Finland. Even myself, I've been part of Slush in Singapore. So it expanded to Slush from Helsinki expanded to Singapore and Tokyo. So I attended the one in Singapore. So in Singapore, we have a very strong government support and support from the private sectors, especially for co-investments. So we have this 1:1 matching, dollar matching investments from the government and the private sectors. So many VCs come to Singapore. I think there's one issue in terms of maturity stage. Everyone thinks it's the government job. Yes, because the government position itself whereby I'm the go-to person for anything within Singapore and outside of Singapore. So there's a bit of, I'll say, lack of support for the maturity stage, and that's where I think Gen Global comes in really well to work together with Singapore government to help the local companies expand overseas to different markets. At the moment now, we are very strong in terms of the outreach to the Southeast Asia market, and by 2030, we'll be the 4th largest economy in terms of GDP. So Singapore position itself as a launchpad to Southeast Asia, and we are strong in fintech. So we have an annual Singapore Fintech Festival, where we invite all financial technology companies to Singapore, and the government from Temasek Holdings actually do investments, and a very strong VC network, and we also have angel investors network. Bansi, for example, the Business Angels Network Southeast Asia comes together and co-invest with the government. Yep. So other local ecosystems will be at a concept stage. So I realize some countries don't have much of that. So for concept stage in Singapore, pretty much all is also handled by the institutions. So our National University of Singapore, Nanyang Technological University are handling all of this concept stage to help these young people. And our youth start as young as 16 years old to do a startup. Our youngest entrepreneur and innovator who got himself a patent and commercialized his product is 9 years old. So
getting a title of a startup nation isn't that an easy path, right? Thank you very much. And as you mentioned just now, it's the government. I mean, everybody, I'm sure in each and every campus is here, you've been putting up so much in the government. The government, they will be good and cool for concept, but once the maturity, government wouldn't be helping much in there. So that's something to be considered. I'll be walking there. By the way, we do this in a very tiny 4 walls, usually. I mean, this hall has been huge, and I've been walking a bit. Here you go. Bahrain.
Hello, Bahrain again. The top 3 insights of our group is that the government has a strong support for the ecosystem, especially for the concept stage and the startups. However, there should be more collaboration and coordination of efforts in terms of the ecosystem. The second point in terms of funding on investment, that we should go for more innovative ways of funding, such as the crowdfunding. And the third point is the regional collaborations, since Bahrain is a small country, so we should have more regional collaborations in order to innovate and spur the innovation within our ecosystem, in addition to more also local collaborations, especially with the universities and the private sector.
Thank you very much. I think you are lining up with the 3 insights with the other table as well. It's the universities, corporates, and technology transform. technology transfer into the town. You haven't brought up the subject of the government, which I fully understand. In my opinion, the government has done quite decent in this area. All right, so who do we have here? Armenia.
Armenia, Antigua, Barbuda, and St. Kitts, we wanted to join our insights and to make it one common one. We are different continents, different countries, but we have one common insight. So we want to have more cohesive and more open ecosystem, and we want have like open dialogue in the ecosystem, and we want like to help and to insist on ecosystem members to share their resources, and it can be even in kind, like sharing resources in kind and financial resources for making it more connected ecosystem, like one ecosystem in one country, and not to have like sub-ecosystems within like different themes and topics. We want just to make it one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Zambia.
Zambia, thank you so much. I think the key insights were coming from the presentation from the gentleman from Australia, which was focusing on taking advantage of the regional provincial focus in approach based on the natural resource comparative advantage. So for Zambia, we're looking at also looking at the thematic areas. So in this case, we're looking at the key economic sectors of the country: agriculture, tourism, agribusiness, and mining. And also very, very important, enhancing stakeholder collaborations, and that provides signage, and that is nationally, regionally, and globally. For those who don't know Zambia, Zambia is a very unique country in Africa with 12 neighbors, but also a member of SADC, a member of COMESA, 21 countries. So in terms of markets, at regional level, we are talking of up to 600 million people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that gives us to the sector, indeed. I look at Singapore as very focused in fintech, big part of it. You as an agriculture and water probably. In here, many countries haven't been really decided. I mean, we do everything. We do the IoT, ICT, EdTech, MedTech, agriculture, food, water, and you can go on and on and on with those. So you have, thank you very much. It's the agriculture which get the big piece. I'm part of it. Sector-oriented. The Sheikh.
Good afternoon. We're from Oman. We start with having a clear vision or direction of the future economy, in which the government have defined 5 main sectors. That draws the direction in which industries and which areas the businesses should focus on. And from that, the practices of redesigning the processes, the government processes, the financing processes, to minimize the efforts needed to enable SMEs and businesses to operate. And that showed a government will to buy in which they are ready to support the system, which is not fully in the entire stages, but phasing it out, starting from the financing stage.
Thank you. Oman, ladies and gentlemen, they've started with the funding. There is plenty of funding in Oman, but there are very less startups. So fine, I mean, it was a choice that the Oman started with the funding, but you need to plug in the other ecosystem pillars as well. Goes along with it. Thank you very much. Who's here? Switzerland. The three insights here.
So we named them all of the three.
3 insights only. 3 insights.
Okay, 3 insights. So good afternoon, everyone. We are from Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. The 3 insights that we highlighted, first is the involvement of government in developing of policies that will enhance the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Currently, a lot of partners are working in silos, and we see that the work is not maximized because there is no coordination. So we believe that the introduction of government will help to create a very solid ecosystem and policies that will enable the development of SMMEs. The second one, it is research and development of measurement tools, because we believe that if we do not know the impact that is being made, as such, we cannot therefore make interventions that are appropriate. So we believe that institutions of knowledge or knowledge institutions can help in the development of the measuring tool and research in that department. And the last part, the biggest challenge that our entrepreneurs experience, it is the lack of access to capital. So we believe that investors and other role players can have a huge impact if they can be on board in terms of providing funding to startups, because a lot of funders are saying startups are risky, and as such, they cannot provide assistance. And that is the fuel that is needed for all the businesses to get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's the access to capital, right? Which make a big difference. The access to capital, which make a big difference to you as an African country. Yes. Do we have Trinidad? Sure.
All right, so good afternoon. Just to be short, so one of the things that we looked at was entrepreneurship networks. So there are a lot of chambers of commerce and chambers within Trinidad and Tobago, but they all deal with established businesses. So we are lacking right now a network of entrepreneurs at the startup stage who can look out for each other and advocate for each other as well. More investment is also needed at the startup space. So we even have a TV show similar to Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, but it's only for entrepreneurs who are already developed and probably are running 5 years now. So at the startup stage, there's a lack of investment, and there's also more work across the board, from government to entrepreneurs to service providers and accelerators are needed to move persons from proof of concept to first revenue stage.
Thank you. You referred to the beginning of the session. Entrepreneurs are the creator of the ecosystem, not anybody else, right? And entrepreneurs is the DNA. It's nothing to be taught in a classroom. It's a DNA within a person. Who do we have here? Many, right?
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, we're representing 2 small states and territories, and to a certain extent, well, although it's geographically larger, but shares similar situations, Kyrgyzstan as well. So we're talking about issues that sometimes relate to a lack of critical mass in our cases. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that really came out, or rather the 3 things that really came out, aren't really all that unique only to us, because we can observe a mirroring of this among various of the other contributions made, where primarily the importance of taking education down to a much lower level, primary and secondary education, because if you start addressing issues pertaining to entrepreneurial ecosystems at a much more advanced level, then perhaps from a mindset and cultural perspective, it's a little bit too late. So the idea was to get them young. And one of the other things that we also shared, but perhaps is much more acute in the case of small territories and countries, is the existence of fragmentation when it comes, to collaboration, interaction, coordination, and alignment among the various different stakeholders. So, for example, it would be pretty futile to have a strategic plan unless there is strategic will. And what we've observed and shared is that very often the reality is that you find an extent of social or organizational competition between different entities. They could be different business incubators. Whereas perhaps in a larger context, this might be an extent of healthy competition, in a small country that's limited in resources, it can be rather destructive because it takes away the focus on what needs to be done collaboratively. So you get a lot of in-competition rather than collaboration. And perhaps the last point that also came to mind in the case of small territories or small countries, although we're talking about things at a national level over here, is to actually internationalize beyond the confines of the shores of your country, for example, by striving for strategic alliances or collaboration with other regional players. In the case of Malta, for example, it could be with southern Italian or Maghreb countries to share, and also with other small countries to share similar experiences. So that's perhaps what really stood out over here, the need for alignment between the various entities and to perhaps turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones. So size can be a limiting factor, but look beyond that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think if I refer to Malta, it will be so much of similarities to what we have here on this island. And we always link to the Gulf. We can't survive on our own. It's a regional ecosystem, is a regional market access rather than just in our own. And access to, by the way, talents, entrepreneurs, we're probably facing the same issues. And I have a dream that all entrepreneurs will have a global passport. They can enter to any country without a visa. That's a dream, right? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're the delegation from Tanzania. And there are 3 insights that we were looking at. Some of them are quite similar to other African countries. The first one was also policy and act implementation. For this one, for our country specifically, sometimes the policies are there, but it's the implementation part that's very difficult. We also looked at research and development, and we see like some markets will find like, for example, in production. So it's very copycat. The entrepreneurs will copy what other person has done without doing the research themselves. So there's that research and trying to develop and issues like that, that entrepreneurs don't do their research and they just jump into it without proper knowledge. Also, we found that entrepreneurship infrastructures, especially like facilities. For example, in agriculture, where can we store things so that they can be sustainable? If we want to export for fruits and other stuff, we don't have the infrastructures or the facilities to be able to do that in a sustainable manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's here? Sishan.
Hi, everyone. We're from Seychelles, and as you know, Seychelles is sort of like a touristic country. And however, our Department of Entrepreneurship was created only 2 years ago. So we're still getting used to the idea of developing or having an entrepreneurship culture in the country. So this definitely is number 1 of our insights, is to build an entrepreneurship education system and to have entrepreneurship and innovation culture within the country. And we can only do that if we have the support of the entrepreneurs themselves, the ones that are already there, and of course with the policymakers. And because we are new at this, I think one of the things that we need is support from leading countries in entrepreneurship and innovation. And last but not least is we need to create good connectivity framework between all partners. This is really important. So I guess this is from Seychelles' side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. By the way, among everybody, how many of you, your country, provide the grant for MVP, for minimal viable product to entrepreneurs? Grants. So the government provide the grants. I only see 1, 2, 3, and minimum viable product. So we have only 3, in some extent. I think each and every, as what Ariane we were talking about, each and every recognizable ecosystem has to have semi-government or a government or a corporate that provide grants related to developing MVP. And this is what this canvas is all about, ecosystem. You could.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening. We're from Gambia, and I would say that our top 3 that we mapped out is the business environment. Improving the business environment is one of our key challenges. And also agricultural mechanization, as opposed to using traditional tools, and the use of technology. These are the top 3 for us. Among them, yes, you have access to finance and the like, but all of those, they are lumped under the business environment. If we have a conducive business environment, it will take care of most of the challenges that we have within the ecosystem. When you look at Gambia, within the ecosystem, we don't have startup hubs that would help the young entrepreneurs to start. Neither do we have a growth fund to help them to grow or things like that. So they're doing this, all on their own. What we have mostly, what government provides, is mentorship and coaching, for young entrepreneurs. Basically, that's what they provide. The rest, they do it for themselves. We have a few institutions, that are doing bits and pieces of supporting the ecosystem. But one can comfortably say our major challenge, and if addressed, will take care of most of these things, is to bring together the ecosystem players, because everything is fragmented. Everybody is doing your own bit, all over. Once we bring them together, then we will address most of the issues that we have, and that's what we are looking towards for the future, to have an entrepreneurship development agency that will, bring together all the players within the ecosystem so that we have a unified vision. Thank you.
And that could be under an umbrella of a university. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Chad. The 3 main points that we want to focus on is first, acknowledge that the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Chad is very young. So we perceive this youthfulness as an opportunity because there is a lot of things to do. There is a lot of breadth to bring in terms of changes, innovations, so that we can move forward the agenda of building up a very strong ecosystem in the future. The second point is about making the structure works. That means involve the government and other stakeholders in order to set up the policies, the environment that are conducive to support this ecosystem. And finally, we think that it's important to have a very strong ecosystem to also fuel and channel the development or the capacity of entrepreneurs. So by doing so, we'll be able to strengthen that ecosystem. And that cannot be done without a capacity building system, but also making sure that those who engage in the path of entrepreneurship have the resources to be supported. So it's important to support these entrepreneurs to have the business angel network as well as the investor that support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What do we have here? This is what? I don't see a tag.
Sudan.
Sudan, please.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. We are Gen Sudan. So what we're going to say is almost similar to most of the groups. The gaps we highlighted here is, number one, the transitioning of startups from growth to maturity phase. 90% or more than 90% of the activities or events designed for entrepreneurs is between start and growth phase. There is a lack of events at maturity phase. Number 2 is lack of knowledge in institutes working in entrepreneurship. There is no training centers. There's a few university programs. And as I said, that's for the concept of entrepreneurship is a little bit brand new in Sudan. Number 3 is lack of government support. There's a few programs designed for entrepreneurs, but it doesn't really match the needs of entrepreneurs or Sudanese entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much. We good there?
I can't pronounce that.
Sorry?
I can't pronounce
Cabo Verde.
Hello, everyone. We from the Cape Verde Islands. For who doesn't know, it is a little islands off the coast of West Africa. In Cape Verde, talking about business environment, we are a country that depend mostly on tourism. So in terms of business, everything end up going to the tourism sector, but our environment, say, is a really attractive one, but we have a lot of limitations, obviously. In Cape Verde, we have 9 inhabited islands, which make it really difficult in terms of developing our business environment equally, say, for the country. So we have some parts, some islands that are more developed than others, more touristical also. In terms of, say, all the relationship between the government and the private sector, a lot of programs has been developed by the government lately to give access to finance, technical assistance. But the question is always, are they all adequate to what is needed actually in the country or not? Apart from the government, we have many other entities that actually develop programs, as our incubator institution develop many programs in terms of development for our private sector from the start, say from the idea to the actual product. Our universities also do develop a lot of programs in products to help, say, establish a proper ecosystem. But in general, I mean, the main problem that I would say that our entrepreneurs are having until now is access to finance, but for diverse reasons. I mean, there is finance available, but then the expertise sometimes is lacking for most of the enterprises and entrepreneurs to actually develop a proper project with a proper business plan and everything to access these products. Access to market is also a limitation because we only have 500,000 people in the whole country. So our bigger ambition is actually to have our entrepreneurs to access the market of the region, specifically, I mean, the ECOWAS market, which we're part of. One more thing that I would say that is not properly set to now is actually a public-private engagement in terms of what is exactly needed. Because at this point, there's a lot of programs, many of them are successful, others crash and are done again. But we don't have this measurement, things that have been talked about this morning actually, about how to measure the results and actually improve the products that we have. We still don't measure anything in Cape Verde. So we try programs and some work, some don't. And we start all over again. which is not always the best way to do it. But saying in general is our environment is improving a lot. And for that, I mean, in the future, what we feel is mostly needed is actually to have access to the markets, because and also to have a higher promotion of our tourism to attract more businesses interested in our country.
Thank you very much, and you'll be surprised how those little tiny islands could do a change. But you're absolutely right about the access to market. It's the same way that it goes as much to our own little island. The three insights?
Thank you very much. 3 quick insights from, good afternoon, everyone. Right, I'm going to take that again. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
One more time. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Lovely. Now that you're awake, I will proceed. So 3 quick insights from Zimbabwe. For those who do not know, Zimbabwe is a Southern African country who one of its former leaders is a little bit more popular than the country, but you will find us in Central Southern Africa. So here are 3 quick insights on the things we feel would make a difference for our nation. I think perhaps it's important, before I mention those 3 quickly, to say that our overarching goal is to build globally competitive entrepreneurs in selected sectors, and we have a whole lot of unique positionings that allow us to be able to do that. And so we do hope that in the time to come, we can be able to do that. And of course, this would be supported by a growing, developing pipeline, of entrepreneurs by training them early. So here are the 3 key things that we think would shape the future of entrepreneurship in Zimbabwe. Ours are, a lot of them are inclined towards government issues. So we think we would do well with a benevolent leader, and the type that just leads the entire nation, changes the scope of how things are done. And part of changing that scope would be the second thing, which is really mindset change. And this speaks from leadership at the very top through to guys who are in the middle, and including those that are at the very bottom in civil service, and even also in private sector. Just that mindset that thinks around doing things in a completely new way. And then, of course, the third thing we did put down here is issues to do with investors, where we are saying that one of the key tenets for us is to have local pension funds. We believe that we have pretty much most of what we need in Zimbabwe. We have local solutions for our local problems. So if we can be able to tap into our present local pension funds, into our national security, social security funds, which are huge amounts of money that can be found within the nation, and tap those in the direction of entrepreneurship. We have sterling examples of startups that have done very well, supported by such enterprises. Some of the founders of such enterprises that did well and have always remained in the minds of Zimbabweans are in here. And so, last but not least, is then to say the government itself must provide financial support for service providers like ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
So we need to wrap up this. We either go and finish this over a drink in the beach, because they're going to kick us soon from this room. Go ahead.
Yes. Does it work? Yep. Quick pitch here to close up.
Yeah.
I'm from Costa Rica. With Honduras and Bhutan, we were also speaking about. It's 3 different things. First one is the mindset and culture. What we need to do is the whole support system needs to engage and make entrepreneurship more attractive, more social, more sociable, more like social utility. It has to be useful for them. Works are labor often needed in the need of having more social work or have more purpose. Each thing, it has to be more simple, and it has to be more rewarding as well. That's the first one. The second one is policy construction, and it's about entrepreneurs, not government, but entrepreneurs owning it and manifesting their power, articulating, collaborating with each other, because they know their needs, and they know how to come upon in an articulated way and push things. They can do it and they can collaborate with the other ecosystems. And last but not least, the resource channels. And this is often what we call, hey, how can we open these channels? And the government, what's the role? But actually, the entrepreneurs have this role as well. And we need to do awareness in 2 sides. First one is how to get or use funding. There are risk mitigation strategies. There are a lot of things we can do as entrepreneurs to know how to use these resources better. And the other thing is, on the other side of the bridge, is how to invest while understanding the needs and the audiences of these beneficiaries, these startups that are doing it. So it's awareness on both sides, the investors and also the entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much. I think we've got all the insights in here, but what's clearly, it's a global ecosystem rather than working in your own confined country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. All right. So that concludes the session for this afternoon. And I really want to thank you all for putting the effort in the afternoon, actually all day. I know it's been a long day, particularly of working, while you actually might want to come here and just listen to things. So a big applause, I think, to yourselves for doing all the work this afternoon. Thank you so much. All right, the other thing, now we wrap up. What's important is to have actually the names of the countries on your documents. So what we'll do, leave it all here. We'll take photos. You can take a photo yourself, but you can leave it here. We collect all the materials, and we'll have it back to you on the Thursday. So if you're here on Thursday, you'll get it back then. If you're leaving beforehand, take a photo, and we'll take it for you. And we might even email it. We'll check with Jen how we do that. But it's important for you guys to leave it here. And we'll collect all of that and give you a copy of that as well. So I guess that wraps it up. And I'm really, again, thankful for your contribution. And also encourage you to keep working on your own ecosystem. Because you'll obviously have seen that it's very important to work from your own strength and your own culture and your own environment. So good luck with that over the next days and the next years to come. Thank you very much.